Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks host the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars. Tonight at 7 p.m., it's soccer night, and kids glow around the bases postgame. Saturday at 6:30, it's Broadway night with postgame fireworks and Broadway rave. Sunday at 1:30, it's Military Appreciation Day, and the kids run around the bases.
A great day out for the entire family. Kids run the bases after every Sunday home game. Want the best seats all season? Get more Ferry Hawks for only $63. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
The left versus the right.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to The Left versus the Right. I'm Jake Novak, and as usual, I'm here with former Governor David Paterson, and we're really lucky to have David Paterson here at this station for a lot of reasons, but especially now when sports and sports-related stories really are at the top of our news, not just the regular news, not just the sports news, but also the political news. There probably isn't a politician more legitimately connected with sports and more obviously a true fan that we've ever had more than David Paterson. So, Governor, I assume that you're really enjoying these days right now. I mean, you've got so much attention on some of our sports teams here in New York, and it's become, once again, the center of our culture. I think it's fun.
It's fun, and it's also one thing that's bothering me is below the enthusiasm and the excitement and just the incredible things that happened this week. The tip-in for all time by Obi. How do I say his last name?
Uji Adenobi.
Oji Adenobi.
That's right.
He tipped it in, but the thing is, there's still this kind of antagonism and violence and people attacking people. Guy with a San Antonio Spurs uniform got beat up by a crowd. That was before the Wednesday night game. And you just don't want those types of things negating what is a super exciting moment. So my biggest moment was the first time that the Mets won the World Series, and the series and the streets went crazy. But they were throwing confetti at each other. These people are throwing rocks at each other. And I want to know who are their parents, where they came from, and is that place on this planet?
Yeah, it's disappointing for a lot of reasons. One of the things, though, and I don't say this as someone at 30,000 feet. I am a huge sports fan. My family will attest to that for my whole life, much to their chagrin sometimes. I'm a big sports fan. But it is always, just as also someone who studies human nature, I have always wondered about the whole social contract of going to sporting events. It's a lot of people who are very excitable, packed together with a lot of alcohol. The fact that we don't have huge riots and fights at every game, I think, is a miracle. And that includes Philadelphia Eagles games where they beat each other up. I mean, not the fans of the other team. The fans of the Eagles beat each other up. They have intramural battles every week. But all kidding aside, like that is, listen, it is definitely a recipe for disaster. We're probably lucky it doesn't get worse. But you made a point just a second ago about where these people are from. And count me among the people who have looked at some of these watch party riots and on the streets mini riots and things like that after these Knicks games. Among those people who have said these people are not fans, NBA fans, they're probably not interested in American-based sports. They might be interested in the World Cup, and we'll talk about that in a second. But they don't really think these people, maybe the guys who jumped on top of a New York City cab and started waving a Palestinian flag after the Knicks won Game 4. I'm sorry. I'm going to say they're not lifelong Knicks fans. Call me crazy.
I guess they're lifelong Palestinian fans.
Yeah, they don't have any teams.
You know, they're provocateurs. They're people who are trying to get attention from themselves, masked behind the fact that the Knicks won these games. And that's what, kind of, it just ruins it to a certain extent, because that game on Wednesday night and that tip-in at the buzzer, and actually for a split second, I didn't realize, because if he had grabbed the ball and dunked it back in, he didn't have time. It was 1.2 seconds left. So the only thing he could do is put his hand up. I don't know why I'm putting my hand up. None of you out there can see it. But it was just an amazing, and he's an amazing player. And one of the best players that you can interview. He always says something sensible.
Well, I've been asking a bunch of people about this. Can you really call it a tip-in when you consider how far away from the basket it was?
The original shot was, exactly.
But also, and where he was. He wasn't, I mean, yes, he didn't grab it and establish himself in this. So I understand technically it's a tip-in, but the strength and athleticism it took for him to tap it in that way is just...
it was incredible.
That's a big deal. For those of you who ever played taps, which is a great basketball drill, and the way that game goes is somebody shoots from the foul line and there's somebody under the basket, and if they miss, you're not allowed to touch the ground. You can only tip it in, and if you do that, then not only do you score points, but then you get to become the shooter.
You go to the foul line.
It's a great basketball drill. It was my favorite game to play when I was in sleepaway summer camp, when we had free time. I used to do that all the time. I love taps. But that wasn't taps. I mean, that was halfway through in the paint. I mean, that was way out, way away from the basket, and really one of the great plays. And, the teamwork on this team is also a great New York story. Obviously Jalen Brunson is the big star, and he's the captain of the team. But the teamwork we've seen in the playoffs, the different roles, different people playing every night. It's another person. It's Brunson and another player.
Right.
A couple in the early game. It was it was some other players. So yeah, I mean I'm very excited about that. That is reminiscent of the old Knicks. And I was a little young to follow the Knicks in 1970 and 73, but I was well aware of those names. That was a team. Obviously, Willis Reed and Walt Frazier were the biggest names, but you had DeBusschere, Bill Bradley, Dean Memminger. I mean, people a lot of players on that team. And then you had, Earl the Pearl coming in for the 73 team. But still, that's reminiscent of old days. And boy, has the NBA made a comeback, Governor.
Yes.
Just a few years ago, it was the players were running the asylum. It was, I want to play with this guy, and so I'm going to blow up this team. And it seems like the league has gotten back in control of things.
The NBA is getting so much attention that the three major networks are having to split up the time to do the playoff games.
Yeah.
And then ABC won to do the championship series. But you're right. I mean, that is incredible. Basketball was basically in the toilet, I'd say 7 to 10 years ago, but they've come back a long way from where they had sunk at that point. But I have a request.
Okay.
For you, Jake, my good friend, and for all my good friends listening out there today, there might be a million of you. Maybe all of you aren't friends of mine, but I have a basketball story.
Okay, here we go.
This basketball story occurred on a Friday. I don't really remember the date, but it was a Friday in June of 1995. And there was an organization that sets up summer camp and summer resources for disabled kids, so that the disabled kids get to play the same games, but they play each other, and it's athletic and it's great. So I go to the event, and then at a certain point, just when the event was over, because it was in a park, there were still people there, and we started playing a little pickup game of basketball. And so I am dribbling the basketball, and this guy comes over to guard me, and he trips me. When he trips me, I can't really pass it to anyone, so I just fling my arm, as most of you didn't just see, and the ball hits the backboard and goes in the basket. And everybody's going crazy. And so one of the reporters, and I think it was from Channel 4, one of those people like Al, I can't remember his name, he comes over and he says, Senator Patterson, you made that shot. You're legally blind. And I said, well, I guess I got over it. So I run down court. I think that's something. I go home. I tell my wife about it. I tell my son and my daughter about it. I tell people I owed money about it. Like, watch tonight. And it never came on. Do you know why it never came on, Jake? And I swear, I'll take you to your favorite restaurant if you can guess.
Well, if it was the summer of 1994. Summer of 1995? Obviously a major story knocked you off. Summer of 1995, what's a major story? I can't.
Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead, tell me.
That's the night that O.J. Simpson drove up the highway in the white Bronco.
Oh, that was the summer of '94, Governor.
Oh, 94.
Yeah, that's right. So,
so his trial was in 93.
Yeah, the trial was the following year.
Yeah, 94.
Yeah. So this was the summer of '94. This happened. Okay,
Well,
maybe that's why we can't find it in the archives.
I know. I told the story 10 times.
Yeah.
But you, who usually has properly investigated everything, didn't even have to look it up to find out it was 1995.
But that's how we know your story is true, because if you had every single detail too meticulously right, then I would be suspicious.
Yeah,
We know that you hit that shot.
So
listen,
all I can say,
Connie Hawkins, eat your heart out.
Yes, exactly.
The real playground king is David Paterson.
Yes. So I'm sitting home, and I can't help myself. I'm screaming at the television, kill him, kill that bastard and put the news on. And I felt the same way to this day.
Yeah, that was something. By the way, the Ford Bronco has made a comeback, at least in the Ford lineup. It's a great-looking car. So there you go. It keeps getting recalled.
Absolutely. Now, coinciding with these games and all that's going on is the continuing back and forth between the United States and Iran, and now Pakistan, who I see as an inefficient intermediary, in that they think they put out a press release Thursday afternoon congratulating themselves, how they put everything together and all this stuff. Then on Friday, they put out another press release saying that basically implying that they will determine to which extent Iran has to part with, some of the minerals, some of the ways that they would be able to conceive making a nuclear weapon. And they're acting like this is all something they did. And it's outrageous. If I could speak to the president right now, I'd tell him, get another mediator. Bring me and Jake will come in. We'll do a better job than these people.
One of the things that I notice in news in general and in politics in general is that when you're dealing with certain rogue nations and criminal types on an individual basis, sometimes our decency works against us. We just can't believe that there would be a nation that would be fine with killing millions of their own people or letting millions of their own people die just because they want to build a weapon. We can't conceive of that, but those people who live in that region know all too well that that's what Iran's all about.
That's the culture.
And it's a shame, and it doesn't mean that we're necessarily so much better than they are. This is not a case of elitism or racism or any of those things. It's just a case of understanding that you're dealing with people who it's very hard to swallow the fact that these folks don't have the same it really just aren't coming from the same point of view as you. And it's not just like, well, if we could just talk it out. No, there's sometimes you just can't do that.
I couldn't agree with you more. When you think about it, the way that the planet evolved after, the 16th and 17th centuries, and then, there were inventions. I mean, there was a whole period of inventions, and the automobile, the electric light bulb, and the medical knowledge that we gained and that kind of thing. In a way, we got used to thinking that happens everywhere. And it doesn't. It just happens here in the United States and in other countries that can afford it. And in addition, all during the time of these changes, there were still oligarchs. There were still civil wars. There were attacks on other countries. There was mass killing of different people who happen to be of the same faith or, a different color. And I think that we're almost wrapping ourselves up in this sort of sheath that these things don't actually happen. No, there are people who will lie in your face and tell you they're going to do something and then not do it. And President Trump did address that Friday morning because he thought he had a deal. Now, I don't get this, James. 8:21 on Thursday morning, he announced that the deal was coming. 5 hours and 8 minutes later, at 1:29, he announces the peace agreement has been finished, and we're just finishing up now, just a few more things. By 6 or 7 o'clock, the Iranians are denying that any of this actually happened. And then inevitably, the president has to come on the next morning and basically curses them out. Now, I don't really blame him for cursing them out, but what I blame him for is actually believing that he could put those statements out even before the agreement was signed and think that they were going to get signed. I just thought he gave them a chance to sabotage it.
Yeah, well, I like to give people anchors for when they follow the news. It's been 32 years that I've been producing and also presenting the news on television and radio. And one of the things I like to do when people want to talk to me about the industry or talk to me about particular stories, I always try to give them a couple of frames of reference. And I understand many of you listening look at financial news as something boring, especially when you're flipping around the channels and you see CNBC and Bloomberg and it looks like geometry homework with all the charts and it turns you off. And I get it. But financial news is a great way to get a handle on where we are, because what the governor just talking about, this back and forth. And what the financial markets have been telling us very clearly over all this back and forth is that they're cautiously, and I underline the word cautiously, they are cautiously optimistic about this process. Now, why do I say cautiously and why do I emphasize it? Because we're seeing oil, U.S. oil, crude oil, back into the mid $80 per barrel range. Okay, that's great. A lot, well down from the 120 we were at the height of this war. So, okay. Right. But if the markets really, if investors really believed that we were on the verge of an absolute real deal, that the deal was going to happen, we would see oil trading in the 70s and the high 60s. So they're being cautiously optimistic. They are hedging their bets. Stocks have been up for the most part, but they're not up 7,000 points, or I think they would be up, the Dow would be up more than 1,000 points if on the day that a real deal is signed, and maybe even more than that. And we're seeing a few hundred points here and there, and that's great. I hope everyone stuck it out. Remember, you only have 2 long-term investments, my friends, in your lives that you really need to have. You either invest long-term in the U.S. equity markets, that's stocks, bonds, our other investments, or you invest in a bunker with water and sea rations. Those are your 2 choices. Because really, if column A breaks down, then that means kind of the world's ending. So you need to do the other investment. I would recommend, long-term investment in, yes, there's going to be ups and downs and things like that, but if you stay in it long-term, it has a perfect record of returning good things for people who stay long-term. It also happens to be a great stability monitor for the world. So this is where I am. I look at them first. Now, are the markets sometimes wrong? Yes, but they don't lie. In other words, they're not going to throw money out the window and burn money just to kind of give us a head fake. That's their money, and they're betting on something, and they're betting on it appropriately, and they could be wrong. They've been wrong before. The markets for a long time, for example, leading up to 2016 and the election, were betting that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And the markets were acting in that way. And when Donald Trump was clearly going to be the winner on election night, at first the markets sold off sharply because they figured they had to change their bets and change their allocations. But by the morning, they were up sharply because they realized, he's going to make us money.
Betting against themselves when they realized that President Trump, I guess you could call that election an upset. I always thought it was close. And then it took them a couple of days to turn around and realize, you know what? We have a better deal than even we were expecting to have.
Well, you have your 3-pointer, Governor. I am the only full-time employed mainstream media journalist at the time who predicted the Trump victory. There were people who came on as guests and predicted it. But in May, actually, they published it in June 1st of 2016. You can look it up on CNBC in my regular editorial column. I said that Trump was going to win, and I explained why. Nobody else. Again, like I said, there were some people who appeared as guests and predicted this, but I was the only full-time mainstream media professional journalist who predicted his election victory. So that's your 3-pointer, and that's my big 3-pointer.
I have some bad news for you, Jake. I also predicted that President Trump would win the election in 2016, and I wrote it down. And as soon as I find it, I'm going to show it to you. Meanwhile, we're going to have a commercial break and come back with more exciting news about what's going on in the country, what's going on in sports, what's going on in the city, and what's going on that isn't going on very well.
The left versus the right on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The biggest stage in world soccer is days away, and every goal changes everything. And now FanDuel's giving you a reason to root for every single one. Introducing Every Goal Pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. Oh, that's right. More goals means more bonus bets, and all you have to do is turn on your token. Visit FanDuel.com and get started now. Let there be goals on FanDuel.
21 plus select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 plus DCKYWY. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-MY-RESET. 888-789-7777. Visit ccpg.org/chat. Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org. Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050. Massachusetts. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Text HOPE-NY in New York. Call 877-770-7867. Louisiana.
Visit FanDuel.com. Get started now. Let there be goals this summer on FanDuel.
The left versus the right.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back on the left versus the right, and we started this show talking about the NBA Finals, the Knicks, the tip-in of the decade, and all these other situations. But beneath all of that is the issue of Mayor Mamdani claiming that he spent $1,000 to buy a ticket and that he, went to the Garden and I don't know where he sat or anything like that. But it kind of raises the issue about the preferred status of individuals. And I'm one who has to admit that I was in the preferred status in 2009 when the Yankees played the Phillies. It was game one, played at Yankee Stadium. Now, I went to law school with Randy Levine, so we knew each other well. So I called him and said, whatever the ticket price is, I'll pay it. But, can you get the tickets to me? So he gets the tickets to me, and I go to the game, and the Phillies win something like 6-3. I'm sitting 2 rows behind him, and I'm thinking, I got to go over and give him my check. This is the biggest mistake I made in my freaking life, Jake. When the game was over, Levine was pissed. He was pissed that the Yankees lost. And I thought, how do I walk up to someone who's pissed and say, not only are you pissed, but here's the money for the tickets, that kind of thing. Well, by Tuesday morning, a man who I actually consider a friend these days and could be from time to time, but the New York Post reporter, Fred Dicker, had already been asking where I got the tickets from. And we obviously at that point had not given the tickets to the Yankees. And that led to, quite an investigation and that kind of thing. But in this particular case, I thought this investigation had fraud in itself. So, for instance, when they got hold of the check that I gave to the Yankees, they wrote in their report that the check had 2 signatures on it. So therefore, they were kind of irking, trying to get one of the district attorneys interested in the fact that there were 2 names on the check. When they asked me about it, I said that my son wrote the check and I signed it. Those are the 2 people who wrote the check. They wrote a whole 2 or 3 pages about how that was wrong. There had to be, because I took my son and I took a couple of friends of his, and I took a couple of my staff members. There's about 5 or 6 of us. They all saw my son sign the check. And that's when sometimes I think these, so-called, unaffiliated groups are put together to investigate things. They, in many ways, are trying to attract attention for themselves than really getting at the truth. And the truth was, I didn't pay it. There was a fine. I paid the fine and apologized for doing it. Now, with Mayor Mamdani, it's not the same thing, but he certainly seems to be hedging a little bit on exactly how he got in there. He could have called me, but he didn't want to do that. And it is an interesting subject about when does your stature create so much of an inference of pleasing that stature that you're not recognizing that for every luminary that gets into the stadium either free. There are 5 people who would have bought tickets that could have brought the same money and sat in different seats.
Yeah, I don't know if I speak for every single fan here, but I think I speak for the common sense fans out there and the ones who have a realistic outlook. I am no fan of Mayor Zohar Mamdani. I'm very, very disturbed by his election.
What?
I'm very disturbed by his election. I'm disturbed by so many things about him. But honestly,
I'm shocked that you feel that way.
The mayor of a city or a governor of a state, but more importantly, the mayor of a city of a team that's playing in an NBA Finals or a World Series, home games, things like that, as opposed to a Super Bowl, which is, at the neutral site usually, with the exception of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Rams. I don't have a huge problem with them going to the game. I would prefer that they would be a guest in an owner's box or something like that, where it really isn't a seat that's being taken away from a fan. They shouldn't be sitting in as they say, the seating bowl of an arena. That I don't think makes sense to me. So yeah, a guest in someone's private box, where basically a lot of times people are standing, especially when you see that at some of these games. I mean, come on, the mayor of the city. Let's not be naive and let's not be nudniks. There's another Yiddish word about it. It's going to happen. This doesn't bother me that much. But if they take a seat away from a fan who otherwise would have had it, that would bother me. But the idea that they're getting in and this is not to me a huge scandal. Obviously, your story is not a scandal. It's the president of the team who has these tickets. You don't expect him to just put them out there on StubHub so anyone else can get it. He's obviously going to use this. And that's okay with me. There are a bunch of things that are not okay with me. I don't like, for example, and I don't see this too much anymore, but for example, you see very often the state lotteries having boxes at stadiums. What the heck is that all about? Listen, you're going to have a lottery, you're going to do this kind of stuff, and I'm not a prude. I get people are going to gamble, but does my tax money have to go to the hardcore advertising to try to get my kids addicted to your lottery or your vaping or your games? Or please stop. And please don't take seats away from real fans so there can be a big sign for people to cash in on a lottery. That I don't want to see. But this is different. So to me, this is not the great, but there you go. But he's lying about it. That's the problem. Why can't he just say, listen, I'm the mayor of the city. The team invited me. They gave me a spot. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That should be all he says. And if there's, and according to ethics rules, I have to pay for the face value of a ticket, but, and an ethics committee, whatever, they can decide what the value of something in a box is, and that's it. And he's not being honest about it. And that's, again, yet another strike against him.
In my case, they wrote this 50-page, indictment. It might as well have been of all these things I did. But nowhere do they say that I lied, that I said one thing and I think it was the other. They did say things like, well, it was not really clear how he answered that question. Well, that was their determination. I thought it was very clear. Mm-hmm. But it's certainly an issue that comes up when you have these major types of championship series, the Super Bowl, the Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, these are big events, and these are events that aren't just about New York and San Antonio. The whole country's watching.
And people are clamoring. Talk about the markets. They're clamoring for a seat.
Yeah, exactly.
Unlike the World Cup, which has a number of seats that aren't selling because the face value price of these tickets for the World Cup, both here in New York and in Los Angeles and a bunch of the other parts of the country,
did you tell me
egregious.
Before we went on the air that in Los Angeles tonight they are not sold out?
No, they're not, and because the face value is $1,000 per ticket for some of these seats, and that's not a good seat. So this is, to me, this is a much bigger problem. This country has bent over backwards. And taken on some serious security risks, by the way. There was a referee from a country that was barred from coming into the U.S. for the World Cup because he has terrorism ties. My goodness.
I wonder which team he'll cheat for.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the team that would cause he'll make the calls that will most likely result in a riot, and then they can do maybe that. But all kidding aside. We are seeing fewer hotel bookings than were promised. We're seeing fewer Airbnb traffic that was promised. And I don't think it's going to be a complete flop, but this is not what we were promised. And for FIFA, which is one of the worst organizations in the country, in the world, it is corrupt. It is hated by, and I say this as someone speaking for a lot of hardcore soccer fans. I'm a World Cup fan. I always tune into the World Cup, and I watch. That's the extent of my soccer interest. But I do get into the World Cup matches. Frankly, I don't ever want to go to one. I'd much rather watch it at a Irish or English pub and have fish and chips and beer. That's the way to watch a World Cup match, in my opinion. Much better than a stiflingly hot stadium and having to spend hundreds just to get in. But anyway, this is not what we were expecting to get out of this. And for FIFA not to lower the face value of these tickets based on the fact that you still have a lot of empty seats is just another example of their corruption. There's probably some kind of corrupt deal in there that they won't do this.
Because that is, if it's not corruption, it's got to be outstandingly poor judgment that at this point, where the games start yesterday, that we should be having this kind of conversation, that this is actually going on. What do you have any idea about why this would be going on, or did they just overestimate how many countries and how many contestants would be in the series?
Well, FIFA didn't, and FIFA just promised a rose garden, and they got paid. So it's the countries, yes, the United States, Mexico, and Canada, who did too much, bent over too far for some of all this. And remember the last World Cup we had was in Qatar. The stadiums for the World Cup in 2022 in Qatar were built by actual slaves. And I'm not talking about like pretend slaves, people who were held there against their will, and slave labor built those stadiums. Qatar owns a lot of the newsrooms in this country, Governor, both realistically and theoretically. They own a lot of on-air individuals. So that's why you didn't hear this too much, but it's a known fact. So, Qatar doesn't own me. They didn't try to. I guess they realized that I wouldn't take their.
I went there about a year ago. And I got out. Everything looked nice, but you kind of wondered, what was behind the curtain.
It would be a much nicer country if they stopped trying to influence politics and foment anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism in this country, because they spend billions on it, and it's a waste of their money, by the way. But anyway, the World Cup, the FIFA is a known corrupt organization. It's right up there, in my opinion, with the NCAA and the College Board. All these institutions that I think have been a net negative.
College boards like the SAT.
ETS, education. I think that these have been a net negative for our culture and our world.
I knew I had gotten a perfect score on one of those exams, and now I can see why.
Well, and by the way, in my case, it's not sour grapes. I am a huge beneficiary of that kind of standardized testing. It boosted my attractiveness to the schools in a way that I don't think I deserved, based on how hard I worked in high school. So I'm not saying this in sour grapes, but it's an anti-intellectual enterprise. The standardized tests. It doesn't promote the joy of learning. It's a puzzle. It's a game. It's something to be figured out. It's not a real learning experience. It's they're obviously, some of the better students are going to do well on it because they're used to those kinds of challenges. But nevertheless, I find the ACT and the SAT to be detrimental for the intellectual exercise of this country. I think that colleges shouldn't just get rid of testing, though. I mean, that's what they tried to do during COVID. They should go back to what they did before the SAT and the ACT, which is ancient history. But they used to have individual tests for each college. You used to have to take a test that was written by the faculty of a college, and you needed to do well on that. What a concept.
There's been talk about bringing that back.
Yeah. Well, it's good luck with that, Governor, because that's going to cost money. I mean, one of the big reasons why the colleges and universities enjoy the standardized testing is someone else takes all the work for it. Someone else does the test. Someone else endures the cost, not them. And it's a great way to match yourself up against the other. The schools are obsessed with their ratings. How are they rated in the U.S. News ratings and some of the other newspapers and magazines that rate? And you can't have ratings. I can't see where I rank this year if you're not all using the same test. Again, everything I just said has nothing to do with intellectualism, nothing to do with the love of learning. You know, when they talk about how they justify their crazy tuitions and room and board costs and things like that, they'll always come back with it like, well, you can't put a price on education. Well, you just did. And it's a lot. And it's not really education. You know, one of my favorite stories that I read this week, Governor, was in the Wall Street Journal. And boy, do these universities deserve it, because this is becoming a trend. Kids who are not getting into their university of choice are moving to the neighborhood anyway, moving to the college town anyway, getting an apartment, taking classes online either at that school or somewhere else.
Oh, this is incredible.
And then just hanging out with the students on campus as if they were a student, and basically stealing that exclusive experience that these universities are trying to create as if this is some kind of Club Med for kids or, you know, expensive day summer camp, but college. I love that story. Good. These kids should hack the whole system in this way because the schools have decided to make it into a for-profit enterprise, and they don't pay the same taxes, if any taxes at all. So, you know, I don't know how we got onto this from the FIFA, but FIFA, ETS, the NCAA, they all stink, in my opinion.
The Girl Scouts, maybe?
Yeah, no, the Girl Scouts are all right. They could do a little better with some of those thin mints.
They do pretty well.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we still have a dilemma going on thousands of miles away from here. And we're going to go back and talk a little bit more about that with Jake Novak. I'm David Paterson. This is The Left versus the Right. And we are so happy that you will join us today. And we hope that you will enjoy the game tonight. And who knows how it may end. We'll be right back.
The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
The Left versus the Right.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back on The Left versus the Right, and we are with Jake Novak. I'm David Paterson, and we're like Wide World of Sports, Jake. We are spanning the globe.
That's right.
With issues to discuss. But one that we might touch on just one last time is what's going on in Iran. It is such a show at this point right now that I, as you know, see myself as a common sense Democrat. I was sitting right here with you when we invaded Iran, and at the time I thought it was the right thing to do. Then it just seemed to stagnate for 2 months, maybe something like that. Then we got more talks, and then President Trump is giving these interviews saying that they're dying. They're dying for us to come in. They're dying for a deal. And then he found out they're not dying for a deal. And now he's dying for what Franklin Delano Roosevelt would call a new deal because the old one's not working. Pick up on that, Jake.
I think that President Trump it's either one of two things. Either he's learning on the job how intractable the Iranians are and how that just isn't going to work with these people. Or he's known that all along, and he's just been going through these motions while he's enjoyed, and I think our economy has enjoyed the relief that we've had for several weeks now. It's been several weeks now where every day the price of gasoline has been going down in the country, the average per gallon price. We're about $1.12 higher per gallon than we were before the war. That's not bad. I understand if you have a 20-gallon tank, that's $20 more that you're spending, but compared to last month, you're down $8 from what you were spending. So I think he's been enjoying that, the stock market rally, things like that, and then he'll have to make more of a final decision. But one of the things that I think that's hurting this, and this will be my kind of last thing I'll say about this, is there are a lot of different groups involved. And one of the logical first things people will say is, why don't we cut Iran up? Give some to the Kurds, give some to this group and that group, and maybe see what happens. And that's really hard to do because as anyone, maybe if you learn properly your history and maybe had some good teachers in universities before they, ruin themselves, lots of borders tend to lead to less security. The more borders you have, the more balkanization you have. Everyone lives in a world of a little bit less security if they feel like they've got 6 different countries surrounding them that may be hostile. And this is not an easy problem to solve. Anyone who thinks it's easy is being really, really too simplistic. And as we said earlier, this Iranian regime is not seriously interested in acting in a civilized manner just because we are. And by the way, this is like when you're angry at like a war going on and you just take it out on your older brother because he's there. There's a little bit of that going on. Obviously, people are attacking Trump all the time for whatever he does, but there's a little bit of that too. It's like, you know what? I can't yell at the Iranians because first of all, they're not here. And second of all, they're not interested in what I have to say and they want to kill me. So let me just yell at Trump. Whereas really, you know what, we should really be standing behind him and saying, you know what, President Trump, we realize you're dealing with a country that isn't reasonable and we will support your efforts to try to quiet these things down. But instead, we just get into these intramural battles and it's just so pathetic,
Well, I think that something you said earlier kind of struck me. It's not that he's saying things that he knows are not true. It's that he's saying things that he wants to be true.
Yeah.
And there's a difference. You're not a liar when you say something because you believe it. And I think that's why he may have come to the conclusion the past couple of days that, this is starting to work out and there are a couple other things wrong. And even one of the press conferences, he said one of the entities didn't want to go along with something or other. He says, that's all right. We can live without that. Like he had really, I think, calmed down and thought that this was okay. But he made the mistake that President Obama made, that President Biden made, going back years ago, in thinking that you're actually having a dialogue with someone that seeks the same result as you do.
Right.
And I don't see that as something to criticize. It's just something he might want to rethink as these talks go forward.
Yeah, since 2016, I've been one of the many people who have said it's important not to take President Trump literally, but seriously. There are people, his opponents, especially in the news media, these supposed pundits who supposedly think they know what they're talking about, take Trump literally, but not seriously. And everything he says. So, for example, he said last week, this past week, that he loves high inflation and he thinks it's going to come down really quickly. Of course, the headline was President Trump loves high inflation. So they're going to report that as a literal thing and not take seriously the fact that he was saying, look, high inflation now is going to be great because it's going to come down so precipitously that it's going to look really great in a few weeks.
And that might not happen. But he believes that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I give him a little bit of a break from time to time.
But just taking him literally or out of context, or the new thing is every time Trump closes his eyes at a public event, they say he's sleeping, which is just not true. By the way, I've stopped doing this, but for years when I would do radio, I would close my eyes when I talked. I don't know why that is. And someone told, and it would sometimes bleed over to my TV appearances. So don't do that, by the way. But I'm not sleeping, believe me. So those are those kinds of things. But we've got to get into another intractable problem, which is these midterms and the whole Graham-Plattner situation, which we talked about last week. But there's one update, Governor, in that after we did our show, a poll came out showing that Plattner and Susan Collins are in a dead heat at 46% to 46%. So to me, this wipes out the whole argument for him. If you're saying, well, the Democrats, they can't make this decision because it's so tantalizing, they might win this race and it's a flip from Republican to Dem. And well, what if you lose it? What if you don't even win it? What if you sold your soul for nothing?
Exactly. Well, I would have thought that some of the discussion after Tuesday's election, and it being that he was aware of these problems that he had and other things that he did is one thing. But this is a party that is trying to get back in the game, that's losing in too many places, And sometimes you have to try a different strategy, and it can't be dance with the one that brung you. In other words, you can't let him dictate what's going to happen. See, this is going to spill over to other races. They're going to raise his name in places far, far away from Maine. And what you want to do is to demonstrate when there's a crisis that you'd address it. Put him out. Now he's out. And the person will be the sorriest to see him go will be Susan Collins.
Yeah,
And so I'm just saying that now you have shown integrity, which is not always credited to the Democratic Party, and at times even with the Republican Party. But now you've stood up and really straightened something out. And years ago, Jake, this used to happen all the time. People got kicked off tickets because they were speeding. Like on the lieutenant governor's running, caught speeding, taken off the ticket. They got somebody else. Yeah. Nothing changed.
Yeah, people need to understand this is different from the 2024 race. Now, I knew for sure that Trump was going to win the presidential election when they dumped Joe Biden. Not because they replaced him with Kamala Harris. I think they could have replaced him with anyone. You can't dump your presidential candidate
in August.
In August or whenever it was. It's just ridiculous. And Joe Biden was a known commodity for better or for worse.
Right. And also, as I was saying before, that's the one time that they did have to hold on to the candidate because they didn't have time to find another one.
Yeah, they had plenty of opportunities before 2024 to get rid of him and to get him to retire gracefully, and they didn't do that. So that's one thing. This is a guy in Graham Plattner. Still, most of the country still doesn't know who he is. He's not a known quantity. He's a net negative. I believe that not only would they not suffer in the polls if they dumped him and replaced him with someone else, but they would gain not only in Maine but in other parts of the country. As you mentioned, his name is already being brought up in a lot of other elections. I urge everyone listening, if you're getting into it with your liberal friends, I urge all my fellow conservatives, start saying Plattner like the way the liberals talk about January 6th and call President Trump a rapist and all the other things. You need to be the person who says Plattner's name over and over again. And that is going to happen. And it would be a big positive. Again, he's not running for president. This is a small state population-wise, big geographically, by the way. Used to live there. But it's a small state population-wise. It would be a net positive if they dump him. The fact that they can't see this, just like they couldn't see that dumping Biden as late as they did was just a disastrous decision at how late it took for them to do it, just goes to show that the Democratic National Committee, and I don't know if the RNC would be any smarter. I'm not saying that. I'm not a company man. I'm a conservative philosophically. I don't join with, you don't have to stamp me with any particular label. So I don't know if the RNC would be any smarter, but I can tell you right now, the DNC doesn't understand this, and they're just really not smart. They shouldn't have dumped Biden that late. If they wanted to dump him, which I think made sense in many ways, it should have been after the 2022 midterms or somewhere closer to that time. Not in 2024 for crying out loud.
Right.
And I still think it's not too late for them to dump this Plattner guy because, again, if he were running for president, yes, it would be too late. We're already in June.
I think the same thing. In fact, if I can see it better than them, they're really in bad shape.
Even David Paterson can see.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, honestly, this is just and the stupidity involved here. Now, a lot of times when the Democrats make stupid decisions lately, and you've heard me say this, Governor, I suspect it has something to do with funding from foreign enemies who are influencing bad decisions because that's how they're getting paid. They're getting paid to make a dumb decision. In this case, I don't think that that's the case. I think this is just a simple example of the Democratic National Committee not being smart enough to realize that it would just do them. And one of the things that Republicans should do to continue to put pressure on them is to make statements along the lines of, and Susan Collins can be one of the people who says this, but the Republicans nationally can say the same thing. They can say, hey, you know what? If I'm going to say this to my Democrat friends right now, and I'll say it too as a conservative. If the DNC dumps Graham Plattner now, I will not dance on their grave and talk about how pathetic they are and how stupid they were for taking so long. I will just thank them and we will move on. How about that? It put even more pressure on them.
Jake, that is a powerful statement. And since we know that people out of state listen to WABC, I think some Republican would really ride the crest of the wave if they were to get up, say, Monday and say exactly what you just said. Some prominent person, they said that, for the good of all this, we'll make it easy for you. Get him off the ticket, and we will not, other than policy issues, argue with you about anything.
Yeah, we'll just say thank you for removing this bad guy, and may the best new candidate win, whatever it is, or that kind of thing. That would really be a smart. First of all, that's the way I really feel. I mean, that's how bad I feel about this guy Plattner. He really scares me. Don't want him in the Senate. Don't want to have him. I think he'll be like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib wrapped into one because it's much more dangerous.
I got to say, for somebody who's been in so much trouble, the way he went after Collins in his acceptance speech, you would think that Susan Collins had murdered 3 people and was found not guilty. I mean, it would seem to me, if I had to be him, I would have gotten up and talked about the problem first. So I know very well that I've done some things that were really untoward, this, that, and the other thing. People respond to individuals who take responsibility. After I heard him speak, I thought she was beating up people and roughing up men or something like that.
I mean, she voted for Obamacare, essentially. She voted to convict President Trump in one of the impeachment trials. And this is the person that you're willing to sacrifice all of your supposed morals for to beat her? It's just so ludicrous. This isn't Ted Cruz.
No.
This isn't Josh Hawley. Some of these very conservative senators who I understand why they would anger classical liberals and classic leftists. This is Susan Collins. She should be one of those Republicans that you're really happy to have because she throws everything into the realm of possible, even when you don't have the majority in the Senate.
And sometimes her departure from the majority was something the Democrats really liked.
Yeah.
So maybe this isn't the race to be trying to set where the rest of the midterm elections are going to come out. Maybe this is the race to get this guy out. She probably beats whoever replaces him. But at least you've got someone who's not always an adversary and probably is very inured with just the fact that you would do the right thing and remove the other candidate. There's too much baggage.
Yeah, I mean, she also voted against Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, really, this is to me, and I know Susan Collins. As I said, I used to live in Maine. My first job producing in TV, 1995 in Bangor, Maine. And Susan Collins was in Congress at the time. She was not a senator yet, and she had a little lower level. And to me, this is it's just incredible. There's better people who could probably represent Maine for either party, but to me, this is a real black stain on the Democrat Party that they're not dumping this guy.
So here we are, the left versus the right, from Obi Chinanobi to Susan Collins. We've covered it all here on WABC 77. We're coming up on 4 o'clock. Jake, thanks for joining me again this week.
My pleasure, as always.
And we'll find something interesting to talk about between now and next week. In the meantime, everybody have a great weekend.
Thanks for listening to The Left versus the Right. You can hear The Left versus the Right Saturday afternoons at 4. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?